Welcome to our channel. Summer 1944, Hereford, Texas. The cotton fields stretched endlessly under the merciless sun, and Martha Webber never imagined she'd be here, an enemy of America, somehow free to walk its soil. "Keep your head down, Webber," Sergeant Harris barked from the truck. "And remember, one wrong move." "I understand." Martha interrupted, her English surprisingly fluent. She was 23, blonde hair pulled back tight, her German uniform replaced by plain workflow that felt strange against her skin. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. German prisoners of war, women no less, working freely alongside American farmers while their countries fought an ocean away. How did enemies become farm hands? This story began in the strangest chapter of the war, one that history almost forgot. But before we discover how these German women ended up in the heart of Texas, tell us where you're watching from. We love to know where our dear viewers are connecting with these hidden stories. The truck stopped at the Patterson farm. Martha's hands trembled slightly as she stepped down. She'd been trained as a nurse in Hamburg, captured when her medical ship was intercepted off the coast of Norway. Now she was here, about to face the family of soldiers who might be fighting her own brother Blouse somewhere in France. "They're here, John," a woman's voice called from the farmhouse. John Patterson emerged, weathered face, skeptical. His son was in Europe fighting Germans. Now he had to work alongside them. "Mrs. Patterson made breakfast," he said curtly. "You'll earn it." Inside the kitchen smelled of coffee and bacon. Martha's stomach clenched. She hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Elizabeth Patterson, gay-haired and sharpened, studied the three German women carefully. "Sit," Elizabeth commanded. "Can't work on empty stomachs." Martha sat confused by the gesture. Anna, another prisoner beside her, whispered in German, "Is this a trick?" "English only," Harris warned. "Sorry," Martha said quickly. She looked at Elizabeth. "Thank you for the food, don't thank me." Yet Elizabeth replied, pouring coffee. "You'll work harder than you ever have. Our men are gone. Someone has to bring in the cotton." John pushed a plate toward Martha. "Can you actually work, or did they send us useless city girls?" Martha met his eyes directly. Something her mother taught her: never look away when challenged. "I grew up on a farm outside Bremen," she said. "I know cotton." "We'll see about that." John stood fields. "Wait for no one, German or American." As they walked toward the cotton fields, Martha caught Elizabeth watching her through the kitchen window. The older woman's expression was unreadable. But it wasn't hatred that scared Martha more than anger would have. What was she supposed to do if these people showed her kindness? The cotton plants stood chest-high, bowls bursting white under the August heat. Martha's fingers moved quickly, memories flooding back: her father's farm, her mother singing while they worked, Close laughing as he threw cotton at her. "You weren't lying," John admitted, watching her technique. "You do know cotton." "My father said, 'Honest work honors God,'" Martha replied, filling her sack. "The war doesn't change that." Anna struggled nearby, her city. Hands already bleeding. Martha switched to German instinctively. "Pinch at the base, don't pull English," Harris shouted from the shade. "She's helping me work better," Anna protested in broken English. "Isn't that what you want?" John intervened. "Harris, go check the other fields, I'll manage here." The sergeant hesitated but obeyed. As his truck disappeared, the tension eased slightly. "Your English is excellent," John observed. "Where'd you learn?" "My mother was a teacher. She believed we should understand the world." Martha's voice softened. "She died before the war, I'm sorry." John's tone shifted. Less captor, more human. "My wife taught English too before." "Before what before?" "Our son enlisted, before she stopped sleeping, before he cut himself off. Just keep picking." By noon, Martha's back screamed in pain. The Texas heat was different from Germany, heavier, suffocating. Elizabeth arrived with water and sandwiches, her old truck kicking up dust. Drink slow, Elizabeth instructed, handing Martha a canteen. Don't need you collapsing. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, call me Elizabeth. The older woman sat on the truck bed studying Martha with those penetrating eyes. You have family in Germany, Martha's heart clenched. A brother blouse, he's. She stopped. What could she say? He's killing your countrymen in the war. Elizabeth finished gently. Like my David. The two women looked at each other across an impossible divide. I pray he's safe. Martha whispered. So do I. Elizabeth replied, I pray they all come home, German boys, American boys, all of them. John turned away sharply, jaw clenched. Don't talk like that, he snapped at his wife. They're not the same. They're all somebody's children, John Patterson. The air grew thick with unspoken arguments. Martha sensed years of tension between them. The war had divided this house before she ever arrived. I'll get back to work, Martha said quietly, grabbing her sack as she walked toward the cotton. Elizabeth called out, Martha, yes, you pick faster than most men I've known. Your father taught you well. And something broke inside Martha's chest, a small crack in the armor she'd built since capture. These people weren't supposed to be kind. They weren't supposed to remind her of home that night, locked back in the barracks. Anna whispered, they're not what I expected. No, Martha agreed, staring at the ceiling, they're not. But that made everything so much harder. What happened when the enemy started feeling like friends? 3 weeks passed in a rhythm of cotton fields and careful conversations. Martha's hands grew calloused, her skin tanned. The Pattersons' farm started feeling less like prison and more like something dangerously close to home. Martha, help me with this irrigation line, John called one morning. His tone had softened considerably. She was Martha now, not prisoner or German. They worked together fixing the broken pipe water, soaking their clothes in the heat. You're good with repairs, John observed. Your farm had irrigation. My father was innovative. People called him crazy for spending money on equipment. Martha smiled sadly. He said the future required investment, smart man. The Nazis took our farm in '39. Said it served the state better under proper German management. Bitterness crept into her voice. They sent my father to work in a munitions factory. He died their heart attack. John stopped working. I'm sorry, Martha, we're all sorry. She tightened a bolt viciously. The whole world is sorry and still the war continues. Elizabeth appeared at the edge of the field, waving urgently. John telephone. His face went pale. Phone calls during wartime meant only one thing, news from the military. John ran toward the house, Martha following, despite knowing she shouldn't. At the porch she stopped, but she could hear Elizabeth's voice through the open window. Thank God, when a pause injured how badly Martha's breath caught David, their son. John emerged minutes later, face unreadable. He looked at Martha standing there, clearly, having heard everything. He's alive. John said quietly, injured, but alive, coming home. I'm glad. Martha said, meaning it completely, are you? John's voice turned sharp again. Your brother's people shot him, took his leg. Martha, my son will never walk right again because of your people. The words hit like physical blows. Martha's throat closed. I'm sorry. John laughed bitterly. You're sorry, what good is? Elizabeth appeared in the doorway. John, stop, no, we've been too soft. She's German, Elizabeth, the enemy. Martha stepped back, tears threatening. I didn't want this war, none of us wanted, but you fought it anyway, John shouted. You all followed that monster. And now my son, my brother, is still there. Martha shouted back, surprising herself. Close is still fighting, still in danger. Do you think I don't wake up every night wondering if he's dead, if he's killed someone's son, if he's become something I wouldn't recognize? The confession spilled out before she could stop it. This was her dilemma, the secret she'd carried since capture. Blouse had written her one letter before she was taken, talking about duty and sacrifice in ways that terrified her. It sounded different, changed. That's not my problem, John said coldly. I know, Martha's voice broke. I know it's not, but I can't help how I feel. Before Elizabeth could respond, Sergeant Harris's truck pulled up. Weber, let's go now. Martha turned to leave, but Elizabeth grabbed her arm. Wait, the older woman's voice was firm. John, she's not the enemy, she's a girl caught in something bigger than any of us. She's German. So what does that make her evil? Does that mean she can't hurt too? Elizabeth's eyes blazed. Our son is coming home alive, John. Count that blessing. Martha pulled away gently. I should go. Thank you, Elizabeth, for everything. As she climbed into Harris's truck, she heard John say something she couldn't quite catch. Elizabeth's reply was clearer, because forgiveness starts somewhere, John, even in war. That night Martha couldn't sleep. David Patterson was coming home minus a leg, forever changed, and Blouse was still out there, possibly doing the same to other families. How could she feel? Relief for one and terror for the other? This beautiful story is just beginning to unfold. If you want to see how Martha's impossible situation develops, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens when David actually arrives. The clash between these former enemies will test everyone's humanity. David Patterson arrived on a Thursday morning mid-September. Martha was in the fields when she heard Elizabeth's cry of joy, carry across the cotton, "He's home, John, he's home." Martha stood straight, her heart pounding. This was the moment she'd been dreading, facing the man her countrymen had wounded. "Keep working," she whispered to Anna in German. "Are you okay?" Anna asked. Martha didn't answer. Through the cotton plants she watched the scene unfold at the farmhouse, a military vehicle, a young man on crutches, Elizabeth embracing him, while John stood rigid, clearly fighting tears. She turned back to her work, picking faster, trying to disappear into the rhythm, but she felt eyes on her. David was looking at the German women in his family's fields. At lunch Harris kept them away from the house. "Give the family space," he ordered. "Eat under the trees." But John came out anyway, David limping beside him with surprising speed for someone adjusting to crutches. "Which one's the German who speaks English?" David called out. Harris pointed at Martha Weber. David approached and Martha forced herself to meet his eyes. He was younger than she expected, maybe 21, with his mother's sharp gaze and his father's stubborn jaw. The empty pant leg was pinned up carefully. "So you're the one Mom keeps talking about," David said. His tone was neutral, unreadable. "Your mother is very kind," Martha replied carefully. "She says you work harder than most men." "That is true, I try to earn my keep." David studied her for a long moment. Martha waited for the anger, the accusations, the hatred she deserved. Instead, he laughed short and bitter. "This is insane," he said, "absolutely insane. I get my leg blown off in France. Come home to Texas and there's German POWs eating lunch under my favorite tree." David John started, "No, Dad, it's fine, it's all fine." David's voice rose with an edge of hysteria. "Everything's fine, I'm fine, the war's fine. Having the enemy work, our farm is perfectly fine." Elizabeth rushed over David. "Sweetheart, come inside, you need rest, I need." David stopped swaying slightly. The crutches wavered. Martha moved without thinking, catching his arm to steady him for a heartbeat. They were frozen, enemy and soldier inches apart. "Thank you," David whispered, surprise clear in his voice. "Be careful," Martha replied. "The ground is uneven." John grabbed David's other arm. "We've got him." "Step back, Weber." Martha released David immediately and returned to her spot under the tree, but she felt his eyes on her as his parents helped him to the house. "That was stupid," Anna hissed in German. "Why did you help him?" "Because he was falling," Martha answered simply. That afternoon David came to the fields. He sat on the fence watching them work with an intensity that made Martha's skin prickle. "You pick cotton like you know what you're doing," he called out. After an hour, Martha looked up. "My family had a farm. The Nazis took it, took everything." David was quiet for a moment. "So you hate them too, your own people?" "I hate what they've done, what they've made us all become." Martha's hands never stopped moving through the cotton. "I hate that. We're here, you without a leg, me without a home, all of us broken by men who will never pay the price themselves. Hitler, Churchill, Roosevelt, all of them." The words were dangerous, possibly treasonous, but Martha was too tired to care. "They make speeches while we bleed. That's one way to see it." David said thoughtfully, "How do you see it?" "I see that I was in a foxhole with my best friend when the shell hit Tommy." His voice cracked. "Tommy didn't make it, German artillery." Martha's hands stilled. "I'm sorry, everyone's sorry, nobody's responsible." David stood balancing carefully on his crutches. "But you help me today, enemy or not, you help me. That's something Tommy would have done. He always helped people, even when they didn't deserve it." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Weber, yes, do you really have a brother fighting?" Martha's throat tightened. "Yes, Blouse. Last I knew he was in France." David's face went pale. "France, where I was." The implications hung heavy between them. Blouse might have been in the unit that fired the shell. Blouse might have killed Tommy. Blouse might be the reason David would never walk properly again. "I pray he survives." Martha whispered, "So do I." David replied, shocking her, "Because if he's anything like you, then maybe he deserves to." As David walked away, Martha felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Everything was about to change. October brought cooler weather and an uneasy peace at the Patterson farm. David started coming to the fields regularly, sometimes helping with lighter tasks, often just talking. Martha found herself looking forward to these conversations, despite knowing how dangerous they were. Not physically dangerous, but emotionally. "Tell me about Bremen," David said one afternoon, sitting on an overturned bucket while Martha repaired a fence post. "Why?" Martha tested the post's stability. "Because I'm trying to understand. Mom says, you're not what I expected." "She's right," he paused. "You're not what any of us expected." Martha sat back on her heels. Raymond was beautiful, cathedral spires, the river markets full of flowers. Every Sunday my mother would take Claus and me to the Schnorr Quarter, these tiny medieval streets, and we'd get pastries from this old baker who'd worked there for 40 years. Sounds nice. It was before. Martha's voice hardened, before the rallies, before the flags, before neighbors started disappearing and everyone pretended not to notice. "You noticed," my father noticed. He spoke against it, carefully, quietly, but he spoke. "That's why they took the farm." Martha looked directly at David. "We weren't all monsters, David. Some of us tried to fight back, in small ways. It just wasn't enough to. My unit liberated a work camp in France." David said quietly what we saw there. He stopped, face draining of color. "How does a whole country let that happen? Fear, propaganda, the slow erosion of morality until the unthinkable becomes normal." Martha felt tears threatening. I didn't know about the camps, not really. Rumors, whispers, things. People didn't say. But I didn't know. Would it have changed anything if you did? The question cut deep. I don't know. I was a nurse, I saved lives. Furthermore, I thought that was my resistance. But maybe her voice broke, maybe I should have done more. David reached out awkwardly, almost touched her shoulder, then pulled back. The gesture was so achingly human that Martha nearly sobbed. We're all trying to figure out what we should have done differently, he said. That's what war leaves us, regret and ghosts. Over the following weeks, something shifted. John still barely spoke to Martha, but he stopped glaring. Elizabeth invited the PS to Sunday dinners. No sense wasting food, she claimed, though everyone knew it was more than that. One evening, David asked Martha to teach him German phrases. If I ever go back to Europe, I want to understand what I'm hearing. They sat on the porch while Elizabeth knitted inside. Martha taught him simple words, house, family, peace, and David repeated them with surprising aptitude. You're good at languages, Martha observed. Tommy was better. He could have. David stopped. The grief still raw. Tell me about him, Martha said gently, and David did. He talked about his friend for hours, Tommy's laugh, his terrible cooking, his habit of writing poems in the trenches. Martha listened, bearing witness to a loss that her people had caused. He would have liked you, David said. Finally, Tommy believed people were fundamentally good. I thought he was naive. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe none of us are as simple as war wants us to be. Martha replied. The moon rose over the cotton fields in the distance. Harris called for the PS to return to the barracks. Martha stood reluctantly. David, yeah, thank you for seeing me as human. Thank you for being human, he replied. It's easier to hate an enemy than a person. And as Martha walked toward the truck, she heard Elizabeth and John arguing through the open window. She's changing him, John said, making him soft toward Germans. She's helping him heal. Elizabeth countered, can't you see that he's talking again, laughing sometimes? She's giving him back pieces of himself. At what cost? Martha climbed into the truck, her heart heavy. She was falling into something impossible, not romance, but something deeper, understanding connection, a friendship that crossed the lines. War had drawn. Anna whispered beside her, you like him? It's not like that, Martha protested. Then what is it? Martha stared out at the darkening fields. It's dangerous, because tomorrow, everything Martha had carefully built was about to come crashing down. A letter was coming, one that would force her to choose between the family she'd found and the brother she'd never stopped loving, and there would be no right answer. The letter arrived on a gray November morning. Sergeant Harris handed it to Martha with unusual gentleness, Red Cross mail from Germany forwarded through neutral channels. Your brother, Harris said simply. Martha's hands shook as she opened it. Klaus's handwriting, but different, sharper, almost violent in its strokes. Leader, Martha, I don't know if this reaches you. They say you were captured, that you're in America. I hope you're treated well, though I doubt it. The Americans are brutal. We see evidence everywhere. I'm in France still. We've done things here, Martha, necessary things. The weak don't survive war. Father was weak, that's why he died. Mother was weak, that's why she couldn't adapt to the new Germany. But we're not weak, we're strong. When I come home, Germany will be purified, perfected. You'll see. Everything we've done will have been worth it. Stay strong, sister. Remember who you are. Remember what we're fighting for. Close, Martha felt sick. This wasn't her brother, not the boy who'd cried when their dog died, who'd helped her rescue a bird with a broken wing. This was someone the war had twisted into something unrecognizable. Bad news, David's voice startled her. He'd approached quietly, crutches, barely making sound. Martha quickly folded the letter. Just family, your brother. She nodded, unable to speak. David sat beside her on the fence. You don't look happy about hearing from him. I'm not sure if I know him anymore. The confession escaped before she could stop it. He sounds like them, the ones my father hated, the ones who destroyed everything good about Germany. Maybe war changes people, or maybe it reveals who they always were. Martha's voice cracked. What if Blouse was always capable of this? What if I just never wanted to see it? Hey, David touched her arm. Brief, careful, you're not responsible for his choices, aren't I? I'm his sister. I should have. What stopped a war, changed his mind from an ocean away. David's tone was firm. Martha, you can't save everyone. But she wanted to God help her. She still wanted to believe Blouse could be saved. That evening Elizabeth found Martha crying in the barn. What happened? Martha showed her the letter. Elizabeth read it, face growing hard. This doesn't sound like someone who deserves your tears. Elizabeth said quietly, he's still my brother, yes, and David is still my son. Your brother might have been the one who took his leg, Martha. Have you thought about that? The words hung like a guillotine blade. Martha had thought about it every single day. What do I do? She whispered. You choose. Elizabeth replied, right here, right now. Who do you want to be? The barn door opened. John stood there, David beside him. We need to talk. John said, his voice dangerously calm. All of us? They gathered in the Patterson kitchen, an enemy council, around a scarred wooden table. Martha sat across from David, Elizabeth and John, flanking their son like shields. Harris showed me your brother's letter. John said, without preamble regulations, any mail indicating P loyalties gets reviewed. Martha's stomach dropped. You read it, parts of it enough. John's jaw clenched. Your brother talks about purification, about things being necessary. That's not soldier talk, Martha, that I know what it is. Martha interrupted, shame burning through her. You think I don't know, do you? John leaned forward. Because you've been working our farm, eating our food, becoming part of the Stop Struggling, and your brother is out there doing God knows what. In the name of that monster. John. Elizabeth's voice carried a warning. No, he's right. Martha said, tears streaming. Clothes has become everything I hate, everything my parents would have hated, and I can't fix it. I can't reach him. David spoke quietly. The letter said he's in France. Do you know where? Martha shook her head. He never gives details. I was near Caen when I was hit heavy fighting. If he was there, David's voice hardened. If he was in that unit, then he might have killed your friend. Martha finished, he might have taken your leg. I know, David. I think about it constantly. The silence stretched, painful and taut. I need to know something, David said. If Blouse walked through that door right now wearing his uniform, believing everything in that letter, what would you do? Martha looked at this family who'd shown her unexpected kindness. Then she thought of Blouse, the boy who'd been and the man he'd become. I tell him he's wrong, she said firmly. I tell him our parents would be ashamed. Furthermore, I tell him that following Hitler doesn't make him strong, it makes him a coward who needs a madman to tell him who to hate. John exhaled slowly, and if he didn't listen, then I'd mourn the brother I lost. Martha's voice broke. Because he's already gone. Isn't he the clothes I knew died somewhere in this war? This person who wrote this letter? She gestured at the hateful words, this is someone I don't recognize. Elizabeth reached across the table, squeezed Martha's hand. That took courage. She said, did it? Martha laughed bitterly. Courage would have been stopping him years ago, before he became this. You were a kid, David said. you couldn't have a knock on the door," interrupted him. Harris entered, face grim. "Weber, there's been a development. New orders came through." He paused. "They're transferring you tomorrow morning to a camp in California." Martha felt the room spin. "What? Why?" "Security concerns. Some PS are being redistributed." Harris wouldn't meet her eyes. "Pack your things." "No," the word came from David. "She can't leave. She's helping with the farm." "Not my decision, son." "Then whose decision is it?" John demanded, surprising everyone. "She's a good worker. We need her." Harris shifted uncomfortably. "Orders are orders." As he left, Martha looked at the Pattersons, this impossible family who'd become her lifeline. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but sorry wouldn't change anything. Tomorrow she'd be gone, and she'd never know what might have been possible, what forgiveness might have looked like if they'd had more time. Martha didn't sleep. She lay in the barracks, listening to Anna's breathing, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling. At dawn, she packed the few items she owned, a change of clothes, a small Bible. Elizabeth had given her Klaus's hateful letter. She almost threw the letter away. Instead, she folded it carefully, a reminder of what she was choosing not to become. The truck arrived at 600 hours. Martha climbed in, refusing to look back at the farm. Looking back would break her. But then she heard running footsteps. "Wait," David's voice. "Harris, wait one damn minute." The sergeant stopped the truck. David reached the tailgate breathing hard, leaning heavily on one crutch. He'd clearly run, or tried to, on his injured leg. "You're going to hurt yourself," Martha said, alarmed. "Don't care." David pulled something from his pocket, a small photograph, edges worn. "This is Tommy. I want you to have it." Martha stared at the smiling young man in the photo. "David, I can't." "Yes, you can," because his voice cracked, "because your brother might have killed him. But you're not your brother. You're the person who helped me see that enemies are just people on the wrong side of a line." Someone else drew David. "I'm not done. You asked me once what Tommy would have thought of you. He would have loved you, Martha. He would have said you proved everything he believed about humanity." Martha clutched the photograph, tears falling freely. "I don't deserve this. None of us deserve anything. We get in this war, good or bad." David gripped the tailgate. "But you deserve to know you mattered. You changed us, Mom, Dad, even me. You proved we could still be human when everything pushes us to be monsters." Elizabeth and John appeared behind David. Elizabeth held wrapped package food for the journey, she said, handing it up. "And Martha, you're always welcome back after the war when this madness ends." John stepped forward awkwardly. "You're a good worker, Weber, damn good. Your father would be proud." The words shattered something in Martha's chest. She'd been holding herself together through sheer will, but John's unexpected kindness, this man whose son her countrymen had wounded, broke her completely. "Thank you," she sobbed, "thank you for seeing me. Time to go." Harris said quietly. He wasn't cruel about it. But orders were orders. As the truck pulled away, Martha watched the Pattersons grow smaller. David raised his crutch in farewell, Elizabeth waved. John just stood there, solid and present. Anna touched Martha's arm. "They loved you, I know. Will you see them again?" Martha looked at Tommy's photograph. Then at the receding farm. "I don't know, but I'll remember them always." The truck turned onto the main road and the Patterson farm disappeared behind cotton fields and Texas sky. Martha had lost her home in Germany. Now she'd lost her home in Texas too. But she'd found something more important, proof that even in humanity's darkest hour people could choose kindness over hatred. That was worth remembering. That was worth fighting for. 3 months later, March 1945, the war was ending. Everyone could feel it. Victory in Europe was close, maybe weeks away. The California P camp was larger, harsher than Texas. Martha worked in the laundry, rarely saw the sky. She kept Tommy's photograph in her pocket, touched it when despair threatened, remembered David's words when hatred whispered that all Americans were cruel. Then on a Tuesday that smelled like soap and steam, Harris found her again, water visitor. Martha's heart stopped visitors who would. She followed him to a small office. A Red Cross official sat there, a woman with kind eyes and devastating news written on her face. "Miss Weber, I'm Sarah Chen. I have information about your brother." Martha sat, hands gripping the chair, blouse. "He was captured by American forces near Berlin 2 weeks ago. He's alive." But Sarah paused. "He's facing war crimes charges. The evidence suggests his unit participated in atrocities against civilians." The room tilted. Martha heard herself ask, "What kind of atrocities, Miss Weber?" "I don't think." "Tell me." Sarah's voice was gentle, but unflinching. "Executions, village clearances." His commanding officer kept detailed records. "Your brother's name appears repeatedly." Martha thought she might vomit. Blouse, sweet close, who'd cried over a dead dog, had murdered civilians. The brother she'd mourned was worse than dead. He was a monster. "There's more," Sarah continued. "The International Red Cross is coordinating war crimes trials. Some defendants have family members testify as character witnesses." "Your brother's lawyer requested you what?" Martha's voice was barely audible. "He wants you to testify that he's a good person, that he was following orders, that he deserves leniency." Martha laughed, sharp, broken, hysterical. "A good person. Did you hear what he did?" "I did, but legally you're still his family. The choice is yours." Martha thought of the letter Klaus had written, "The weak don't survive necessary things." He told her who he'd become. She just hadn't wanted to believe it. She thought of the Pattersons, of Elizabeth saying, "You choose who you want to be." "No," Martha said firmly, "I won't testify for him." Sarah looked surprised. "You understand he could face execution." "I understand my brother made choices, terrible choices. I won't help him escape the consequences." Martha's voice strengthened. "My father fought against the Nazis in the only ways he could. He died for that resistance. I won't dishonor his memory by defending someone who became exactly what he hated." "This is your final decision?" "Yes." Sarah stood for what it's worth. "Miss Weber, I think you're very brave." "I'm not brave, I'm just trying to be someone my parents could be proud of." Martha paused. "Can you tell Blouse something for me?" "Of course, tell him. I loved who he was and I'm sorry for who he became, but I won't save him from his own actions." "That's not love, that's enabling evil." After Sarah left, Martha sat alone in the small office. She'd just condemned her only living family to probable death. The grief was overwhelming, crushing. But beneath it, impossibly, was something else, relief. She'd chosen, finally definitively chosen, and she'd chosen to be the person the Pattersons believed she could be. August 1945, the war was over. Martha stood at the dock in New York Harbor. Repatriation papers in hand, she was going back to Germany, a Germany destroyed, divided, unrecognizable. The country she'd loved was gone. Blouse had been executed. In July she was alone, almost. "Martha Weber," a familiar voice called. She turned. David Patterson stood there without crutches, now walking with a pronounced limp, but walking nonetheless. Elizabeth and John flanked him, all three smiling. "How?" Martha couldn't form words. "Red Cross told us your ship schedule," Elizabeth explained, pulling Martha into a fierce embrace. "Did you think we'd let you go back without saying goodbye?" "I don't understand. Why did you come?" John stepped forward because your family, Weber, stubborn, complicated German family, but family. I heard what you did. David said quietly about your brother, about refusing to testify. Martha's eyes filled with tears. He was a monster. I couldn't. You chose over blood. That's the hardest choice there is. David handed her an envelope. This is from all of us, an invitation. When Germany's rebuilt, when you've done whatever you need to do there, come back. The farm is yours if you want it, David. I can't accept. You can and you will. Elizabeth's voice was firm. You proved that enemies can become family, that forgiveness is possible, that humanity survives even when everything tries to destroy it. Those lessons are worth more than cotton. Martha opened the envelope inside a deed to 20 acres of the Patterson farm signed over to her name. This is too much, she whispered. It's not nearly enough. John replied, you changed my son's life. Gave him back hope when he'd lost everything. That's priceless. The ship's boarding soon, David said. But promise me something, anything. Remember what Tommy believed, that people are fundamentally good. You proved he was right. Martha hugged each of them, this impossible family born from war's ashes. As she walked toward the ship, she turned back one last time. I'll come back, she shouted. I promise. We'll be waiting, Elizabeth called. Martha boarded the ship to a broken Germany, carrying Tommy's photograph, the Pattersons' invitation and something more precious than either, proof that even in humanity's darkest hour, love and forgiveness could triumph over hatred. History would record the camps, the battles, the politicians, but Martha carried a different truth. Sometimes the real victory wasn't won on battlefields. It was won in cotton fields, at kitchen tables, in moments when enemies chose to see each other as human. That was the story worth telling. That was the legacy worth